Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Saturday, July 10th, 2021, and today we're going to be talking about Representative Jim Clyburn, the notable representative from the state of South Carolina who endorsed Joe Biden in the 2020 Democratic primary, prompting him to a large victory, propelling him, into a large victory in South Carolina in that Democratic primary, which pretty much paved the way for Joe Biden's nomination to the presidential side of the Democratic Party, and then moving on to the United States White House. I mean, looking at what happened with Jim Clyburn, this man sort of single-handedly, in many cases, directed Joe Biden's campaign to victory in the 2020 Democratic primary. And now, as a representative from the House, is asking Joe Biden to consider pushing for senators to vote to scrap the filibuster, or at least change it for the sole reason of passing voting rights legislation. Now, Jim Clyburn is, like I said, very influential from the Democratic Party. I mean, I kid you not, South Carolina was that first state that was the changing of the tides in favor of Joe Biden. He won as much delegates as he needed to in this state leading into Super Tuesday, to a point where it put him in second place nationwide. Joe Biden received 39 delegates here and first place with nearly 50% of the vote. In all of the other nomination contests, Joe Biden didn't even reach 20 in any of them. So in South Carolina, Joe Biden was able to win by a very astonishing amount, enough to lead into Super Tuesday, which led into a multitude of victories. Then the pandemic began and things started going Joe Biden's way. But the main takeaway here is that Biden owes a lot to Jim Clyburn. And Jim Clyburn has actually been, surprisingly, a more conservative type of Democrat member of the United States House of Representatives, certainly a little bit more centrist than the rest of the Democrats in the United States House, at least comparatively. And for him to call on Joe Biden to push for these senators to scrap the filibuster for specific things, in this case voting rights, is interesting to see. Now, the filibuster has never been something that Joe Biden has said that he wanted to remove. When they asked these questions back during the 2020 Democratic primary, Jim Clyburn endorsed Joe Biden, knowing that his answer to this was a hard no. His answer was, and we can actually expand to see what it truly was in this question, but you'll see here, actually, we're going to have to head over to the actual page itself, but you will see that he supports nothing major in terms of overall reform. Abolishing the electoral college, it's a no for Joe Biden. Expanding the size of the Supreme Court, it's a no for Joe Biden. Setting term limits for justices, abolishing the legislative filibuster, a no on all of them. And then when asked why by the Washington Post, he says that the structural change requires constitutional amendments. It raises problems that are more damaging than the problem that exists. We're in a situation where the reason they gave judges lifetime tenure, you know why. So answering all of those questions at once, and then asking, saying, even with the filibuster in place, even if Democrats have control of the Senate, do you believe you're going to move any of your agenda? And he says yes. And when asked how, talks about the fact that people can't agree on, but then there will be a certain point where people will come together and vote for many major things. And he says that he believes they can reach that consensus without changing the filibuster rule. And that might have been his position back in 2019. And to this day, Joe Biden still has not changed his policy on the filibuster. But he hasn't seen as much pressure from people such as Representative Clyburn as he is now. This was a pretty notable pressure play from Jim Clyburn, going to the mainstream media to have them bring this up as a major point. I mean, Jim Clyburn could have gone directly to Joe Biden, and I'm sure that Joe Biden would have been open to listening to the man who practically secured his nomination in the 2020 election year. But the point was that not only was it just Jim Clyburn who is asking for this to go, there are plenty of other senators who are open to completely eliminating the filibuster, 15 who have already committed to saying they would change the filibuster in one way, and 15 that are open to changes, with just one completely opposed to changes. And Jim Clyburn says that he doesn't care if he says it through a telephone or through a microphone, essentially saying either use the bully pulpit or directly call Joe Manchin and tell him that he wants to go ahead and change the filibuster. But it's not just him. Jim Clyburn wants the filibuster to be changed. That way Democrats can pass pieces of legislation that have to do with voting rights. saying that in effect of carving out the legislative filibuster, which essentially would say, in this small pocket, in this small realm of issues, there will no longer be a filibuster that, can be applied. For instance, for voting rights, that's to say that, you can filibuster everything else. You can filibuster infrastructure. You can filibuster X, Y, and Z, but you cannot filibuster voting rights. And that's that sort of carve out that Jim Clyburn is asking for, because it seems to be an issue that the Democratic Party truly wants to have as a main point of their 2022 campaign cycle. In addition, seems to be a main goal for the Democratic Party to protect voter security and protect voter sanctity in their eyes. What's happening here is that Jim Clyburn wants there to be an exception. The same way an exception was made for Senate, court nominees. For those Supreme Court justices, you can't filibuster them anymore. And the reason for that is because, that was changed with the Senate rules. You see, what happens here with this changing of the rules is that it sets a precedent. And that's what I think many Democrats, including Joe Biden, is afraid of. If he was in a position where he could abolish the filibuster, but then Republicans couldn't use that against them 2 years later, I'm sure they would go through with it. But of course, that's not the case. When the Senate does end up back in Republican control, and it's not a question of if, but a question of when, they will certainly take advantage of whatever type of changed, altered, dissolved filibuster, or lack thereof, to pretty much repeal a lot of what the Democratic Party passed and what they wish they could have passed, going so far as preemptively stopping it, putting things in place, getting rid of certain voting possibilities for people around the country. I mean, what happens when there is no filibuster means that this will backfire on Democrats, but the question is when. With the filibuster taken out of the picture, think about how many things would have passed at this point. Infrastructure, DC statehood, possibly, things that seem to be pipe dreams now. Puerto Rico statehood would be back on the table. Other things would start to be under consideration. And that's because the filibuster being in place seems to be that major stopping point for major pieces of legislation. But it seems that for at least the election bill and for changing elections, stopping gerrymandering, election reform across the nation, this is when the big guns of the Biden primary campaign are starting to speak out. Clyburn wouldn't have this base, wouldn't have this voice in this without the impact he had on the Democratic primary in 2020. Jim Clyburn is only getting this notable reputation for, what he's asking of Biden because of what he did for him. That endorsement was not necessarily easily won by Joe Biden, but it certainly was something that allowed him to easily win the Democratic primary. I mean, take a look at the states leading up to the state of South Carolina. What happened with Jim Clyburn's endorsement was that this ended up being a very good result. It was something that Joe Biden really could not have asked for at a better time. This endorsement single-handedly saved Joe Biden's campaign. And let's see here if we can find the results. I'm hoping that we can. Yes, we can. But in the first few races, disregard the delegate count. This is after the convention, so pay attention to the popular vote. I mean, in Iowa, in the Iowa caucus, Joe Biden received just 14% of the vote, lagging behind Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, Pete Buttigieg, and nearly tying with Amy Klobuchar. In the state of New Hampshire, Joe Biden received just 8.4% of the vote. Isn't that crazy to think about? 8.4%. Bernie received 26, Warren received 9, Buttigieg received 24, Klobuchar received 20, Biden received 8.4%. In the state of Nevada, Joe Biden declared this race as something that was bringing him back as a comeback type of candidate. He received just 19% of the vote. Bernie Sanders received 41%. Warren received 12, Buttigieg received 17, so Biden got second place. Other times, he placed not so well. In the state of New Hampshire, he got 5th. In the state of Iowa, he got 4th. In the state of Nevada, he got 2nd. But then after South Carolina, winning 0 delegates in New Hampshire, barely any in Iowa and Nevada, South Carolina propelled him to victory. to a point where after that Clyburn endorsement, the numbers in South Carolina skyrocketed, and then Super Tuesday hit just 4 days later. Then Biden won Alabama, Arkansas, Maine, Massachusetts, Warren's home state, Minnesota, Klobuchar's home state, North Carolina, Oklahoma, Tennessee, Texas, huge shocker there, Virginia. And the fact is, all of the 538 estimations had Bernie or Warren or Klobuchar winning in Minnesota or Massachusetts or Maine. Biden was expected to win North Carolina, Oklahoma, Tennessee, expected to lose Texas, win Virginia, so he was expected to win probably half of what he won on Super Tuesday. And the one person he can thank for that is Jim Clyburn with his endorsement in South Carolina, because it was very much a snowball effect, and it was what many historians would say is the biggest political comeback for any Democratic candidate in United States history. He started out as the front runner, dissipated, fell down, ended up getting, fourth, fifth, second, and calling that his largest victory, which it was at the time, and then one endorsement changed it all. So Clyburn's pressure here isn't necessarily ill-founded either. This is a point in pressure where Jim Clyburn knows that what he says and what he does will have an impact on Joe Biden. He knows what he did for him. America, I would say, at least the political operatives in Washington, D.C., in the White House, know and constantly remind Joe Biden what Clyburn did for him, because this race would not have been won by Joe Biden, likely had Clyburn not endorsed him in South Carolina. And looking at the way that the American voters stand on this exact issue, like I said, it isn't ill-founded. When Data for Progress and Vox asked voters, what would you support in terms of abolishing the filibuster? Which issues would you support in order to abolish the filibuster or change Senate procedure? The For the People Act, which is the Voting Rights Act, received 28% of people saying they strongly support it, and 24% saying that they just somewhat support it. But altogether, that's 52% of American voters who say, okay, consider maybe scrapping the filibuster, consider maybe abolishing the filibuster, do what you need to, I guess, in this point, just change the Senate procedures in order to pass the proposal. Well, that's what's happening here with the For the People Act. That's what Clyburn wants Biden to do. And it seems that the American public, for instance, seems to be in approval of such, dramatic change for certain pieces of legislation. The American public has always been like this. On certain things that there seems to be unified agreement on, they're willing to go against what they were previously for. In this case, the filibuster. The American public used to be very solid about the filibuster being intact, but is slowly starting to peel away from it. And on certain issues, such as the For the People Act, they seem to be even warmer and even more open to the idea of getting rid of the filibuster for the sake of an individual bill, for the sake of something that directly impacts them. So I expect Biden to possibly talk with some of these senators. What's happening in 2022 is that the stakes are so much higher now in the Senate because of the filibuster. If Democrats are able to find enough United States senators who say, we will abolish the filibuster, who cares what Kyrsten Sinema thinks? Who cares what Joe Manchin thinks? If the Democrats reach 52-48 and 50 of the senators say they want to change the Senate rules, they have enough votes. And looking at some of these candidates, in Florida, Val Demings, the Democrat there, the likely Democratic nominee, has said she supports abolishing the filibuster. In the state of Ohio, Tim Ryan, the likely Democratic nominee, says he supports abolishing the filibuster. Sherry Beasley, the seemingly frontrunner in the United States Senate election in North Carolina, says she's open to consideration about abolishing the filibuster. In Pennsylvania, where the Democratic Lieutenant Governor, John Fetterman, has said now that he supports abolishing the filibuster. So if Democrats are able to just get 2 out of these competitive races and retain all of the ones they hold currently, Democrats could truly abolish the filibuster in 2023. But right now it seems that Clyburn realizes, the Democrats won't last long in the House of Representatives. The time for election reform is now. The time to make that provision, to make an exception for the filibuster is now. That's what Clyburn is arguing. He wants to ensure that the Biden administration and Joe Biden recognizes that if the For the People Act is to pass, that there must be an exception within the filibuster in order for it to happen. It's not just Biden. He's going to need to do a lot of convincing with the rest of these senators. Many of them are open to changes, but there still seems to be a whole debate as to whether or not they'd support completely eliminating it, but it seems what Clyburn wants to do and what the American public supports is an individual provision where you take parts of the filibuster and say it no longer applies to this. The same way the Democrats did for judicial nominees can technically be done for the Voting Rights Act, pertaining to voting, the right to vote in the United States. I mean, what can be applied and not applied based on the filibuster is up to that simple majority, but changing the rules does prompt a serious change in precedent, which could make the Republicans retaliate the next time they control the United States Senate. But for right now, it seems Jim Clyburn is determined to get these election right bills passed, enough so he's going out to the media and pressuring Biden heavily to consider scrapping it for this sake. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the bottom left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video you can watch, and then a playlist for my 2022 Senate election analysis videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all tomorrow.